Hi all, I'm Dan Smigrod, founder of the We Get Around Network Forum. Today is Thursday, July 15th, 2021, and you're watching WGAN-TV live at 5. We have an awesome show for you today, 10 reasons to choose or switch to Ionblade for WordPress hosting. And here to talk to us about it is Mark. Mark, help me with your last name.
I know it's kind of complicated. It's Sthathatos.
Sthathatos. Thank
Yes.
you. And Mark, I should know that because I've actually been talking to you for years. And I've just really have known you by Mark at Ionblade. And Mark is actually the Director of Business Development. He's the awesome subject matter expert here to talk to us about Ionblade for WordPress hosting. Mark, before we jump into this topic, 10 reasons to choose or switch to Ionblade for WordPress hosting. First, what services does Ionblade offer?
Sure. So from like a top-down kind of hosting perspective, first, I guess would be like domain registration, .com, .net, .org domain names. We have, I think, around 120 different domain names. So there's some like .photography, .media, some newer. They're called, the acronym is GTLD, Global Top Level Domains. And then, below that, we offer 4 or 5 different types of hosting environments: shared hosting, virtual private servers, cloud servers, and then dedicated servers. And then a bunch of add-on products for the different hosting packages. So things like SiteLock, different email hosting services like Google Workspace. And then, we offer like backup software and some other like security products for web servers and virtual private servers.
Well, I reached out to you a number of years ago because our webmaster said, oh, Ionblade is rock solid. And we have many We Get Around Network members that have been asking about WordPress hosting. So we've just been referring them to Ionblade. So I thought it would be great actually to have you on the show and talk about that in part because every time I've reached out either to you or to Ionblade support, the response time is like nanoseconds, it seems. It's just like super support. So I thought it'd be great to have you tell your story. What are some of the reasons to choose or some of the reasons to switch to Ionblade for WordPress hosting?
So specifically for WordPress, we've designed the panel that, as a client, you have access to specifically for WordPress. So within the hosting panel, you have the ability to basically create a WordPress environment with a few clicks of a button. You can clone or duplicate that WordPress environment to, let's say, like a subdomain or a dev environment, so you can make changes to the site, not in the on the production site, and then clone it back to the production site. And then also the ability to create backups, make changes to DNS. Basically, we've created an entire panel kind of focused around WordPress and making it easier for our clients to use.
Cool. I have a lot of follow-up questions based on that, but I do want to let our viewers know that we're going to have 2 special offers related to Ionblade coming up. So stay tuned for that. I'm not, I'm geeky, but I'm just not a tech savvy person. So Ionblade, okay, getting calls, emails from prospective clients that are still struggling, figuring out even what WordPress is. Knowing that they need it, because let's say in our community, WGAN, they're interested in using WP 3D models or WordPress plugins. So if they've been using some other kind of hosting, all of a sudden they have a need for WordPress without necessarily knowing what WordPress is. Okay for newbies to get in touch with Ionblade?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, WordPress, it's a content management system. So if you don't have a control panel that allows you to like easily install it, the manual way could be kind of confusing. So basically, again, our panel makes it really simple, but if you're brand new to hosting or to WordPress, we offer phone, email, and live chat support. So, a new client could always call us and we could walk them through setting it up and kind of getting familiar with the account and how things work. Or, if they really, are kind of in a difficult position, maybe after the install or having some issues logging in, then obviously, walk them through fixing those problems or fix the problems for the clients.
Mhm. What are some of the reasons that companies switch to Ionblade for WordPress hosting from another provider?
There's a lot of reasons. I mean, sometimes it's more cost effective to go through us. It's pretty wide. There's, for example, low cost hosting, you might be able to pay $5 or $10 a month for WordPress hosting, but you kind of substitute the support, right? So you pay kind of on the small end of the spectrum, a few dollars a month, $5, $10 a month, but you don't get any support. On the other side of that spectrum, you may be paying a few $100s a month, but you don't need that much support. So we are, I would say, depending on the size of the website, somewhere between 10 to, let's say, $30 or $40 a month. But you get that same white glove kind of customer service level that you would get with, some of the more expensive hosting companies. And we're not a really large company. There's, some of our competitors have hundreds or thousands of employees. We have, I think, 60 something employees. So it's a smaller company, but large enough to offer 24-hour support. And it's kind of more of like a white glove approach to hosting, but at a reasonable price.
Maybe you could speak a little bit more to white glove, because I think it's easy for someone to say, well, we provide great service. You can call us, you can set up a ticket, you can chat with us online.
So basically, some of our competitors, you'll call them, you'll wait in a phone queue for 15 minutes, and they'll have tiered service, right? So when you call in, you'll talk to a tier 1 a customer support agent. That agent doesn't really have the ability or access to make any changes to your website or to your hosting account. So he basically takes the information from the customer, puts it into a ticket, and then submits that ticket to an internal queue, where eventually one of the tier 2 or tier 3 customer service agents will address it. So we don't have that same basically system. If you call us, again, the people that have worked for our company some have been here for 8-10 years, and they're the same people that will take those phone calls and be able to assist you like in real time. So it's more of like I would say a real time approach to troubleshooting issues than a ticket-based or a queue-based approach to solving issues. And for a lot of people, especially clients of ours that rely on their website for revenue or for lead generation, they can't have their website go down for 3 or 4 hours or a day, because if they're depending on their website to generate, the revenue that is brought in, or at least part of the revenue that's brought in every day, it's really important to have a hosting company that could fix an issue kind of on the fly, rather than having that issue go through the queue and get escalated and fixed several hours or days later.
Mm-hmm. I know that that for me, anytime I've opened up a ticket with Ionblade, it really does seem like there's almost immediately somebody writes back, and the answer is spot on.
We try to keep the ticket response time under 30 minutes. And then, obviously, if it's a really urgent matter, a lot of people will open a ticket and call in, and then we can try to expedite it and have it done within 5 or 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm. I thought I'd read a testimonial for Ionblade from one of the We Get Around Network members, WGAN-Forum.com. Los Angeles-based Home3D.us Kevin Dole. He's been on our show. He's a frequent contributor in the We Get Around Network forum. I thought it might be helpful just for context to for you, you may not even have read this in the form, but Kevin writes, here's a personal review. I moved home3d.us over to Ionblade a couple years ago. The move was smooth with no break in service. My website immediately experienced the boost in speed. By that, I mean that when someone entered home3d.us in a browser, the site, which is huge due to the fact that I have way too many models, meaning virtual tours, pop up really fast. A bit later, I upgraded to a higher level of service, dedicated server space or something like that. You can tell I'm no expert on this stuff. And the site now loads in half the time it did before. Ionblade also has both phone and email text support. He doesn't mention the chat support. I've really rarely needed anything but called them this week to learn how to better upload my self-hosted 3D Vista tours. Basically, I had questions about using FileZilla, not Ionblade service. I reached a team member who was fantastic, patient for my first grader questions, and I came away knowing how to better service myself. Ionblade has been great. I encourage others on WGAN to learn about their service. I don't know if you had seen that or read that.
No, I haven't, but I think I've spoken with Kevin at least once or twice, and I kind of remember, I mean, it was quite a while ago, but I think he had hundreds of gigs of media files. So he had, you know, a huge amount of media files, and basically moving them to a larger hosting environment ended up speeding the site. I forget, you know, it's been 6 months, a year and a half, time's kind of flown by since the beginning of COVID. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things we could do, and it's not just the hosting packages alone. I mean, the servers that are hosting all of our sites are all SSD servers. So the hard drives are solid state drives. So it's like the fastest technology as far as hard drives go. It's the same sort of technology that's used in like your iPhone or most you know, newer mobile devices. But we also have a staff of some really good webmasters. So you can put a WordPress site on an extremely fast server, and it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to load fast. There could be problems with plugins, image optimization. So being on a really fast server is important, but it doesn't necessarily mean the website's going to load very quickly. So we can, you know, step one is make sure you're in the right sort of hosting environment. Step two, analyze the website, and if it's still loading slow, less than like, let's say 1.8 or 2 seconds, then look into some of the issues or problem areas and try to fix those to get that load speed under 2 seconds. Not only for you know, the visitors of your site to have a more enjoyable experience, but as far as search engine optimization goes, Google recommends having a load speed of, I think it's less than 2 seconds. And those are all, you know, as a new customer, we'd be more than happy to help you fix those issues to the best of our ability.
If I have an existing WordPress site and I switch it to Ionblade, do you help in terms of porting over the site to Ionblade?
Yeah, so for all new clients, we'll do the website migration for free, assuming that we have access to the old or the, you know, the current hosting environment. So for example, let's say you're at XYZ hosting and you wanted to switch over to us. Typically, we just need either WordPress admin access and FTP access, or access to the control panel. If it's Plesk or cPanel or direct admin, those are basically the two options. So either access to admin access to WordPress and FTP, or access to the hosting environment. And then we've migrated all over for free. And usually, I mean, depending on the size of the site, maybe it could be done same day, but usually we say within 1 to 2 business days.
I would say many of those in the We Get Around Network forum community aren't necessarily the most tech savvy. We're all pretty geeky as photographers in terms of the kinds of photography that we do. So we often have somebody who is our webmaster that's actually taking care of our hosting needs. Not necessarily self-hosting, but the design and creation of the site. So
Right.
it sounds like if we're going to migrate to Ionblade from another hosting service, is it typically best to put the webmaster in touch with you directly rather than being in the middle of the conversation with the things
Yeah.
that you just talked about? I have no idea what all those things are that you just
Yeah.
talked
I
about.
mean, so yeah, if you're not familiar with that terminology, then probably the best second step would be just to have the webmaster communicate directly with us. And once the account's created, there's the ability to add sub accounts. So if you wanted to add like your webmaster to the Ionblade account, then he could simply log in and communicate directly with us via ticket or call us and give us the information that we need via email or over the phone. But let's say you hired a webmaster to build the site a few years ago and he's no longer in the picture. Maybe, you lost contact with them or some other reason. Just give us a call because we could at least guide you in the right direction and try to tell you the exact steps to take in order to get control of the website. And then once you have those access points, usually it's like a username and password for the hosting account or for cPanel or Plus. Once you have that information, then basically we have all that we need to move the data over. And once that's completed, then we can walk you through the next step and kind of take you step by step through the process, rather than trying to overwhelm you and kind of present everything at once.
If I'm setting up a new site, so a typical example for our community is I'm a residential real estate agent, but I decided to buy a Matterport camera and set up a separate business offering Matterport virtual tours to my fellow real estate agents. So I am literally starting from scratch in terms of setting up a domain and hosting and WordPress, etc. Should I go ahead and get my domain through GoDaddy or some other platform and then talk to Ionblade about WordPress hosting, or should I be getting my domain from Ionblade? And why does it make sense maybe to get it from one place rather than one thing from
Yes.
one platform and one from another?
So like GoDaddy, for example, they offer basically the same domain extensions, the GTLDs, global top level domains. We include some of the services that GoDaddy will charge extra for, like privacy protection. So for example, every time you register a domain name, you have to put in your first name, last name, address, email address, and phone number. It's required by ICANN. They're kind of the legislative body that overlooks domain names. So when you register a domain and privacy protection costs an extra $5 or $10 a year, you might opt out of it. Well, then the problem is you end up getting a ton of spam emails and phone calls because that becomes public data. So we include privacy protection for free for all of our domains. So maybe that's a good reason to choose us as a domain registrar. I think .com, which is like the most popular domain ending, it's $9.99 to register it. And that's valid for 1 year and then, or actually up to 10 years. So if you, let's say you register for 10 years, it'd be $99.99. And then once it renews, it's $12.99 per year. But that includes the domain name, privacy protection, DNS management, and I think one free email address. So we bundle those three kind of add-ons for the domain, and we include them all in one price.
So if I think I'm getting a deal maybe by going to another platform to get my domain, for cheap
Mm.
on the first year, all of a sudden I'm opening myself up to getting a ton of spam, because that filtering is either I got to pay more for with another platform, or I opt not to get it. And then all of a sudden I'm actually overwhelmed at the number of companies that actually start emailing me.
Yeah, it could become a big problem. I mean, we've had clients in the past that have registered domains, and I mean, to the point where they're getting like hundreds of emails per day. So definitely something you should really consider doing if you're going to register a new domain. And the internet's kind of pushing for it to be a standard. You know, like the GDPR laws in Europe, I think it's required now, and I think in Canada, but not in the United States. So yeah, I mean, that's like one of the reasons. Also, like depending on who you're buying the domain from, they may give it to you for like, let's say 99 cents for the first year, but they'll add on a couple of products like Office 365 or 10 email accounts or inboxes, and not charge you for the first 30 or 60 or 90 days. So you have to remember to go in and cancel those products, or after like the 30th day, you'll be automatically billed for them. So that domain that if you only needed the domain and you paid $1, but you forget to cancel the add-on products that you opt into when you purchase it for that promotional price, and then 30 days later you get invoiced or charged $70 or $80. It's you just have to be kind of careful about promotional pricing for domains, because a lot of the times it's either going to renew for a really high amount, or they're going to try to add on some products that basically will be free for the first month, 2-3 months, and then they'll start billing you for them down the line.
Since we get around network, standard and premium members actually get the free use of Ionblade.
Right.
We've been involved in conversations with our members and with Ionblade, where there's been the challenge that comes up is the We Get Around Network member has just bought the domain with another platform.
Right.
And then we're setting up free use of Ionblade, or free use of WordPress hosting powered by Ionblade. And the easiest thing to do would be to move the domain from that other provider to Ionblade. But I think we find there's like a 30-day lockout or something. Can you speak to that?
Yeah. So after when you first purchase a domain, there's a 90-day period from the date of the purchase that you can't transfer it. It's a 90-day transfer lock, and that starts as soon as it's purchased. It also, anytime you change any of the contact information. So let's say you register a domain 6 months ago, you log in and you update the email address for the it's called Whois information, the registrant data admin and technical contact for the domain. If you update any of the contact data, it'll then put another 90-day transfer lock on it. So this happens quite frequently, where people don't really understand these, kind of, the rules are actually really important, because it's meant to prevent domains from basically being transferred away from somebody. So, but again, it could be kind of a pain, because if you want to switch registrars or make some adjustments to DNS, these transfer locks could make it more difficult, because a lot of domain registrars, they don't have a very easy panel to manage. It's called DNS. It's a domain name system. It's basically how your domain name connects to where your website's hosted and where your email's hosted. And a lot of registrars panels don't have a very robust kind of DNS management system. So it could make it really difficult to try to, say you want to use Google Workspace or Office 365. It could be kind of difficult to set those products up correctly, because their panel doesn't have the right tools to edit DNS records.
Well, I think that kind of speaks to if you're new and you're planning to set up hosting, get the hosting from the same company that you get the domain. And ideally, if you're getting the free use of Ionblade through We Get Around Network, then it really would be way easier to just get your domain with Ionblade, get your hosting from Ionblade, than to try and have the domain in one place and the hosting in another. Now, there is a workaround. Could you speak to that of what you do when the domain is actually, it's just been bought, it's yet someplace else, but the hosting is purchased from through Ionblade?
Yeah, so basically, if you want to, if the domain, let's say, is at GoDaddy and the website is hosted with us, once the website is, if we migrate the website over, once the website's migrated, or if it's a new WordPress site and you want to start building it, all you have to do is log into, for example, your GoDaddy account and update, they're called your name servers, NS records, to ours. And it's really simple. If you just Google search how to update name servers on GoDaddy, it's like the top article. It's very transparent and easy. But if you're with, maybe a smaller domain registrar and it's a little bit more complicated, it's still the same process, but their panel might make it more difficult to do it. So feel free to, again, contact us and we can help you, walk you through it, or we could even reach out to that company on your behalf and try to get it done for you.
So that's kind of a way of saying if you're just starting out, again, maybe a real estate agent that's setting up a photography service business, and therefore you now need a new domain, you need a new hosting. Try to get your domain at the same place that you get your hosting, ideally to do your hosting.
It's just easier for everyone. I mean, our prices are really competitive, but I would say more importantly, it gets rid of a lot of the frustration because, if let's say you're ready to build the website and you have all the content and you gathered all this information, and then you get to the point of actually starting to build it, or your webmaster, somebody's starting to build it, and then you realize, oh, I don't have access to my domain. I registered it here years ago, or my friend registered. It can become an ongoing issue. And if Ionblade has both the domain and the hosting, any issue that we could ever encounter, we can fix, because we have access to the domain and the hosting. Whereas if the domain is somewhere else and there's an issue with the website, it doesn't necessarily mean it's a problem with our server. It could be a DNS issue, and we don't have access to, for example, your GoDaddy account to log in and to troubleshoot it. And it could just kind of, be a more inefficient process if we don't have both the domain and the hosting within your account.
And so it is possible to have the domain one place and to have the hosting elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been the one who's felt the pain because I've often been the one that's between the We Get Around Network member who is now setting up free Ionblade service through We Get Around Network, but they went ahead and just bought their domain someplace else, and it creates this challenge. And then there's this conversation that goes back and forth trying to understand DNS and this .ns, if I'm saying that correctly.
It's N is in November, S is in Sierra. It's the acronym for name servers. It's probably the most important DNS record out of all of them.
Yes, and even though I've literally been doing this for years with Ionblade, working with Ionblade and We Get Around Network members, I still don't fully understand it. And I'm so thankful for the team at Ionblade that just says, copy and paste what you send back to me to give to the client, to give to their webmaster, and then have that conversation. But I'm trying to provide this kerfuffle conversation in order to say it's so much easier to get your domain at Ionblade and get your hosting at Ionblade. And then if there's any issues or challenges, it's much easier for Ionblade to
it's a lot easier
troubleshoot.
for us to fix it, for sure.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm new. I get WordPress through Ionblade, but I still have my domain someplace else. You do this name server dance to make it all work. Where does SSL fit in, and why is that important?
So SSL, for the audience, people that don't know what it stands for, it's an acronym. It stands for Secure Socket Layer. It's an encryption protocol. So it basically encrypts any information between your website visitors or people visiting the website and the server. So usernames and passwords for, let's say, WordPress, credit card information, online forms. It's mandatory for like HIPAA and PCI compliance, but highly recommended for every site. And we include that for free with our hosting. So, if you sign up for WordPress hosting, we'll include the SSL certificate for free, and then help you optimize the website so it's being used correctly. Because we see a lot of like new clients, for example, that'll switch over to us, and they have an SSL installed on the server, but the site will say like not secure in front of the domain name in the web browser. So even though they have paid for one and it's installed on the server, it's not being used correctly. So we'll make sure, not only that the certificate's issued, but being fully optimized on the website. So you get that padlock icon in front of the domain name so that people visiting your site feel secure.
And so it is an actual, it's way easier and faster, once again, if you have the domain name registered at Ionblade to do that implementation. I want to say if the domain is someplace else and you have to set this name server thing back and forth, then the We Get Around network member has to go do the name server thing, and then there's a piece of information that needs to go back to Ionblade, so you then can implement the SSL.
Yeah, that's correct, because we can't issue the SSL certificate until the domain name is pointed to us. So it's like, again, it's just easier if the domain is registered with us, because we can, from the beginning of, as the account's created, the domain's registered with us, we can very efficiently get this completed in 3, 5, 10 minutes, rather than going back and forth and trying to troubleshoot getting access to the domain registrar. And I've had instances where it's taken weeks or months to get the domain or access to the domain, and especially in like a circumstance where maybe somebody else like within the organization started or like registered the domain in their name and they had left the company. The process of reclaiming the account could take like weeks or even months sometimes. So keeping everything in one place is the best, I would say probably the most efficient way for sure, but also best way to keep things organized.
Yes, and Mark, I could imagine that this is like so over the head of so many of our viewers, because I'm barely treading water trying to ask the questions that kind of cover this subject matter, only because I've been in the weeds of trying to understand, oh, we need to get this SSL. Oh, we can't get it until the name server from the GoDaddy is pointing back to Ionblade.
Yeah, and I think we've had like situations where it's taken days or weeks to kind of sort through it all. So definitely. I mean, it's just easier for everyone to have it in, I would say, one place. And it's going to save, let's say there's another domain registrar offering you the domain for $1 for the first year. Through us, it's $9.99. But it could literally lead to hours of your time wasted trying to figure out, how to get access or update name servers, get EPP codes, stuff like that. So
yeah, and I'll make it easy for We Get Around Network standard and premium members, because we'll go pay for the domain registration as well
right,
as a standard and premium member. So that means if you're trying to save $9 by getting the dollar domain in the first year from GoDaddy and then getting your free hosting through We Get Around Network, let me pay for the domain, the registration for you. You can still have your name. You pick it out through Ionblade. You register it, or we'll register it for you for your company. But you'll have your domain and your hosting and your SSL all managed by the same company in one place, and avoid this challenge. I think that probably the last 5 or 10 minutes has been about that. Probably makes everybody's eyes glaze over, but the takeaway is make your life easy and simple by getting your domain and hosting, WordPress hosting, all in the same place.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the best case scenario as far as, making everything easier for both parties, us and the client.
Yeah, even anticipating some of the things that can go south. So if you have yet somebody else working on your on setting up your site, and they've registered your SSL, but it's somehow in their name, it's not in your name, and then all of a sudden, as you're, I guess, talking about trying to reclaim the ownership and get it kind of passed through, it's hard, it's difficult.
Really difficult. Sometimes you have to get like a notarized letter, bills in your name, submit your identification. I mean, it can take like weeks or even months to reclaim it. It's a whole process that you have to go through.
A little bit of a challenge. So back to reasons to choose or switch to Ionblade for WordPress hosting, and I think these are actually some of those reasons. If someone wants to just try out Ionblade, is there like a free trial period?
Yeah, so we have a 30-day free trial period. If you sign up, you get 30 days for free. And, if for some reason you don't like the service, there's no risk on your end. If you do like the service, you get basically the first 13 months or, first month for free. And then you could either pay monthly, annually, biannually, or triannually.
Okay. So it seems like Ionblade has a lot of really like silver, gold, and platinum, because everything seems to be either silver, gold, or platinum. Can you speak to that a little bit, maybe a little bit deeper in terms of, without necessarily going into pricing, but I think you kind of have for silver, gold, and platinum in every different iteration. So whether it's WordPress or other types of hosting platforms, that seem.
Yeah, and most people either fit into the silver or gold package, but basically it's just silver, like the basic package. The first tiered package is really intended for like 1 or 2 websites. I think like majority of the WGN clients usually have like 1, maybe 2 sites. So I think, like 95% of the referred clients are within that first tier. And basically the gold package is, I think, 3 to 5 websites. It depends on the hosting package, but if we're talking WordPress specifically, it's going to be, I think, 3 to 5 sites included. And then the largest tier, I'd have to double check, but I think it's like 5 to 7 sites or something like that.
Yeah, I think that the point is, because most of our community, self-employed, one
Right.
website, photography website, maybe the spouse is doing something, that silver plan is actually going to cover it. And then you
Right.
can choose to say, are you the kind of person that likes to pay month to month, or are you like the kind of person that wants, give me the best price, I'm willing to prepay for 3 years?
Yeah, so if you pay for three, like the advertised price on our website is going to be that 3-year price broken down into monthly. If you pay month to month, it's still relatively inexpensive. I think it's, I mean, I could double check, but I think it's like $14.95 a month. And then if you pay for a year, it comes down to 12. And if you pay for 2 years, it comes down to like $9 or $10. And if you pay for 3 years, it comes down to like $6 or $8 or something like that. So
Yeah,
it's
easy enough to go to all your prices are on your website. I'm
yeah.
going to take people through our affiliate link, which is wgan.info/Ionblade, because
Mhm.
there are membership benefits to using the WGAN affiliate link, wgan.info/Ionblade. All the prices are on the website. It's easy to figure out pricing. I wanted to go a little bit and talk about network uptime. Today, Thursday, July 15, 2021, just before we went on the air, Matterport actually had an incident that took off the cloud hosting of Matterport 3D Showcase and Matterport Workshop, not affecting everyone, but affecting some. So every once in a while, we always think, well, these things are always up, they never go down. But even the largest provider for our community had an incident today. Can you speak to uptime of Ionblade?
Yeah, sure. So we won an award, I think it was through Host Advice. So our SLA for shared hosting is 99.98%. So that's, I forget exactly, maybe 2 or 3 hours a year, 4 hours a year of downtime. But we have had instances where like our shared hosting environment hasn't gone down for like 2 or 3 years. And that's because we're constantly monitoring our shared servers, keeping them updated with like the newest patches and software updates, but we also exchange our shared servers. Again, it kind of depends on the server itself, but typically every like 3 to 4 years. So we're migrating, older servers to newer servers. We don't keep any legacy servers in our data centers. We cycle through them every like 3 to 4 years, depending on the type. So um, we guarantee 99.98% uptime for shared hosting. And then our highest SLA is for cloud hosting. It's 99.99%. So again, not that much of a difference. In most instances, you're not going to have any issues, except for maybe like scheduled maintenance, things like that. But most of, when we schedule a maintenance for one of our servers, it's being done somewhere between like 12 to 3 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Usually on like a Friday or a Saturday night. And again, that's not very typical, maybe once or twice a quarter.
Well, speaking personally for We Get Around, one of our accounts is with Ionblade for hosting. We use for WP 3D models to host our gallery of Matterport tours. Rock solid. It just works.
Right.
And our members in the We Get Around network forum community that use Ionblade, I think even the example of Los Angeles-based Home3D.us, Kevin Dole has been super happy because it's just been rock solid and super fast. Mark, I promised a couple special offers for our viewers. First, if you do use, you can get the free 1 year free of WGAN-TV training you in Matterport when you use the WGN affiliate link to sign up for Ionblade for WordPress hosting powered by Ionblade using our affiliate link, wgan.info/Ionblade. And for We Get Around Network standard and premium members, you get the free use of WordPress powered by Ionblade. WordPress hosting by Ionblade is free for We Get Around Network standard and premium members. You also get the free use of WP 3D Models WordPress plugin, which is often the reason that people ask me to say, hey, I want to get WP 3D Models WordPress plugin, but I'm using a non-WordPress site. Who do you recommend? And we recommend Ionblade, and we include the free use of WordPress powered by Ionblade for standard and premium members. Mark, are there other reasons to choose or switch to Ionblade for WordPress hosting that we haven't talked about?
I mean, I would say probably the best reason is our support. We offer, earlier on in my career, I would deal with a lot of other hosting companies for issues on the behalf of our customers, because I started off in a more niche kind of product. So I was contacting a lot of the big hosting providers, and I would say, like, if I'm going to focus on one thing specifically about Ionblade, it's going to be the customer support and response time. I would say that, to have for this price, to have basically a staff of people that are very responsive to any trouble tickets or issues that you're having. I mean, it's kind of like having your own team of like internal employees that kind of monitor your website. So I would say that's probably like our biggest added value if you do become a client of ours, is the fact that we're providing some of the best support in our industry.
I would say it's the white glove support that Ionblade provides is the reason I reached out to you, Mark, to be the guest on WGAN-TV Live at 5. I just find, most of us probably don't have a reason to actually call, email, open a ticket, chat, except when you start an account. And most of what we've talked about, where some of the pain points and challenges is often when you have a domain name registered someplace else.
Right.
And so I've had to interact with Ionblade on behalf of members who get free use of WordPress powered by Ionblade. And I just find every time I've ever opened a ticket, the response time has been amazing. I know you talk about, you try to respond within a half hour, but I feel like sometimes it's like often within minutes.
Yeah, I mean, that's really, like, we know if we want to compete in our environment, we're not going to compete at a cost, because there's going to be lower cost providers. We don't compete on cost. We compete on service, and we try to provide the best service in the industry at, again, a reasonable price. And
it's hard to say that, because everyone would say, oh, we provide the best service.
Yeah.
But I'm not talking about specifically for hosting companies, but just in general in the world, whenever we call companies, it's, sorry, our wait times, COVID is extended our wait time, that, the Earth's rotation is taking longer than expected, please hold.
Right.
Every place we go to get help or support for whatever it is, seems like companies haven't figured out how to answer the phone, how to respond to an email, how to answer chat. It's just it can be a kind of a service nightmare, and yet when you reach out to Ionblade, you get a fast response. I don't want to overpromise for you, because I know you generally within a half hour, but frankly, it's been within minutes. And then more importantly, the response is like spot on. It's not some boilerplate response that doesn't align with what my question or problem or challenge is. Somebody, obviously intelligent on the other end is focused on exactly what I've asked, and then I get back a laser sharp focused answer back. And so kudos to the team at Ionblade that's figured out how to be super responsive and use that as a differentiator from other companies. So yeah, Mark, before I let you go, there was just two other things I wanted to ask you about, not necessarily WordPress related, but for our community that's constantly creating single property websites for real estate clients, the address, the URL can be exceedingly long. Can you speak to registering domain names and just pointing them to other URLs to make it easy to give a client a vanity domain like 123 Main Street.info?
Yeah, so like I actually kind of going through the list right now of some of the new global top level domains that are available. So like real estate related, they have property. I know you guys are doing 3D modeling or imagery, so they also have .media. They have like, for example, .xyz, .co. It's actually a global, it's a country specific global top level domain. It's intended for Colombia, but a lot of people use it because it's almost like .com. It's a little bit shorter. They have like specific domain endings now for cities. Like for example, Miami has its own ending. So if you want to do like real estate.miami, for example, it may be available. You'd have to check.
Yeah, but even just for a specific property address. So if the business is, if the address is 3423 Piedmont Road Northeast, Atlanta .media, then it's super easy. I only bring this up because for our photographers, this is such an easy add-on to offer for $25 or $50 that cost you $10. And it takes 2 seconds to order the domain and link it to the URL. Boom, you're done. You made, and if you step and repeat and you do that 100 times during the year, then that may be another $2,500, another $5,000 that goes to the pocket of the photographer. And you can use Ionblade to do all that domain buying. Yes.
Right. Correct.
And then the other thing is there are so many members in the We Get Around Network forum that are using a Gmail address for their business. What's the process with Ionblade so that I can actually get a vanity URL for an email address?
Yeah. So basically, once you set up the hosting account, we don't limit basically the amount of emails. So you can have as many emails as you want. So once you set up the hosting account, you could start creating email addresses. So let's say your domain name was xyz.com and you wanted info@xyz.com. Once the hosting account's created, you could create that email address. And let's say you wanted one specific, like Mark, for example, or Dan@xyz.com. You could create as many email addresses as you'd like, specific to your domain name. So it's kind of a more professional way to present yourself to clients or customers because you're not using, an email account that you created when you were in college or, something that you may want to separate business, personal life from.
Awesome. And then my last question actually relates to, there are many members in the community that are starting to use 3D Vista software and are looking to host models that they create that have super large files. Kevin at Home 3D, for example, does a lot of 3D Vista models, and these models tend to be super large. That's not necessarily WordPress hosting. Can you just speak in general about either the...
Yeah, so if you're starting to gather, like, let's say, I think Kevin has hundreds of gigs. I would have, don't know off the top of my head, but let's say you start to get into the hundreds of gigs or even terabytes of data. We have options for like Amazon SES storage. We have a couple of different, they're not servers intended for hosting websites because they're super slow, but we could configure storage servers for you to host or to store all those really, really large files. So you're not wasting the money to put them onto a hosting server, but you have access to them and you're not paying an outrageous amount. We could configure and set all that up for you, and we can include it within your Ionblade account, so it's accessible from your Ionblade portal. I think I'd have to look, but I think like a gig of some of our storage is like like a half a penny per gig per month or something like that.
Yeah, I won't even ask you to quote pricing, but I think the point is if you have a large volume of content that needs to be stored on the internet, and maybe some of that content needs to be live, and a great deal of it is just, I still need to store it. I don't need to have it active. You have solutions for Ionblade has
Yeah,
solutions.
exactly. We can set it up for you and help you manage it, and it's all accessible through your Ionblade account.
Awesome. Ionblade.com. Again, if you use the WGAN affiliate link to get there, wgan.info/Ionblade, there are some benefits that we talked about earlier about using the We Get Around Network affiliate link. Mark, before we say bye, was there anything else that you wanted to chat about in terms of Ionblade?
Off the top of my head, I can't think about anything, but I want to thank you for having me on this show today. It's we've been working together for, I'd say, at least 3 or 4 years now, and it's always a pleasure to see you and talk to you, because I know most of the communication we have back and forth is just through email now, but it's always great talking to you guys. And if any of your customers or clients need anything, feel free to have them contact me directly. I'd be more than happy to walk them through any issues that they may be having, or helping them get the account set up or transfer websites, whatever's needed.
Awesome. Mark, thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, thanks. It's my pleasure.
We've been visiting with Mark. Help me out with your last name, Mark. I'll never get it.
Stathatos.
F. Harry Stowe. We've been visiting with Mark. He's the Director of Business Development for Ionblade. Ionblade based in the greater Los Angeles area. For Mark, I'm Dan Smigrod, founder of the We Get Around Network Forum, and you've been watching WGAN-TV live at 5.